Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to the second month of the calendar cardigan. Um, so last month we talked about gauge and we got started on the ribbing for the back, and there's a lot of ribbing. There's a lot of ribbing. I think it says repeat rows one and two. It's like 13 rows. And
13 times. Yeah.
it's a lot of ribbing. I keep thinking, God, am I not done? I keep recounting. And I am not done with my ribbing, but that's okay because I'm also making a little baby sweater. So I can work across pieces quicker in demonstration. So I will have a little baby sweater going as well as my full-size sweater. Um, but in class this morning, we did talk about how you count your rows of ribbing. So I want to start there, so that you can get an idea. And okay, bigger. Okay. So here I've got my front post and back post ribbing going. And it's not always the easiest to see how many rows you have done. Okay. So the easiest thing I think is to take your ribbing and kind of spread it apart this way. I'm going to put something darker behind it. There, that'll help. And what you want to do is you want to count. Let's zoom in. Okay. So if I can do it one-handed. So here is, make sure I'm looking at the right end. Here was our foundation row right here. So that was row one. And let me look here. Um, our foundation row, and then we started um our ribbing, our front post. So here was our foundation row right here at the beginning. And then we started our ribbing. So in between, if you kind of pull it apart, you can see here's our front post, and but there we have our back post. So you can count these little bars going across. So here was our foundation row. This is the first one. This was the chain and then the stitch on top of it. So I'm not going to count those because I want to do rows 3 through 13. So this would be beginning row 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So I've done 9 rows of ribbing. I think that's the easiest way to count. Um, and this is important to know that you have the correct number of rows because when we do the fronts, we're going to want that ribbing to match coming across the back and the front. So you want to make sure you've got the right number of rows. If you don't like that many rows of ribbing, you could make it shorter. That's not a problem at all. Just make sure you mark how many rows you did. So when we do the fronts, you can do the same number of rows. I actually kind of like, went back and because I've just been working with just the pattern part. I don't have the book with me. So I went back and I looked at the pictures and I actually kind of like the oversized ribbing. I think it's kind of one of the elements of this sweater that I really like. So I am going to continue on and finish up those rows. And I think it matches the kind of the style of the grid that we've got going here. I like the oversized ribbing that goes along with it like that. Okay. So, hopefully you're off to a good start with your ribbing and ready to start the back. We had a couple people who had started the back and a few people who were unsure that they had that it didn't seem like the right size, had done a few rows. And one of the things I had already listed for class today was rechecking your gauge. And this is something we recommend both all of our teachers here at Around the Table Yarns. Once you start a sweater, you've done your gauge swatch, you've blocked it, it's all good, and you get started, and then something happens. I don't know what it is that happens. it's just something that happens on occasion. Your gauge can change. You can accidentally pick up the wrong hook. You can maybe be in not so much of a hurry to get your gauge swatch done and you relax and your tension's a little bit different, but your gauge can change. And if you aren't aware that it's happening, you're going to complete your whole sweater and then it's not going to fit. So I recommend doing your ribbing, doing I would say a couple, two, maybe three repeats of our pattern, and then let's recheck the gauge and see if you are still spot on. And I realize that this blue against the white is a little dim, so let me put out my little mat here. That will help a little to see behind it. Perfect. Okay, so um, here's a good example. I think it's supposed to be 4.5 pattern repeats. And so here's how I measure. If you've got your whole, I only have a little piece here, so that's how I need to measure this piece. If I was working on my big piece, I could measure all the way across and see if it fits within the schematic that you're working from. Okay. So you can do the whole measurement and see how far off you are. And if you're willing to live with that or not. Um, but here's how, and this is how we measured our gauge swatch, because I'm going to measure. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. And I think this is what I was measuring, just a little bit shy of I was a little over 4.5, but I was okay with that for the size I was picking and the amount of ease I wanted. So this part is still on, but that I used already. I'm going to measure up here because it's starting to look a little bit wider. I'm pretty tired when I was working on this, so let's see how much different it is. So let me line it up. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a full 5 pattern repeats. So it's a quarter of an inch, half of an inch, bigger, over 4 inches. If your whole thing is, so every 4 inches, I'm gaining half of an inch. That adds up. So what to do about it? You can go back to your pattern and how much ease had you planned on having in your sweater? Are you okay with the change? If you're not okay with the change, if you're not too far, you could change your hook size. Um, go up or go down depending and see how that works. You could also block what you've got going on here to see how that affects it because we did block our if you blocked your swatch sample. Um, that's what I measured my gauge from was a blocked sample. So it isn't fair to compare unblocked versus blocked because I know that this particular yarn reacts to blocking a decent amount. So you could block what you have. There's nothing wrong with blocking something that you're working on and then continuing to work on it because then eventually you can reblock the whole thing. So that's not a problem to do. You can do that. You can also rip it out and start over. Or if you feel like that in this case, I've got a few more stitches than I need. I feel like for me, and when I do my actual piece, I'm going to pretend that I'm getting the same thing. Um, I'm okay with it down here at the bottom because that happens to be the widest part of me is down there at the bottom. But what I might not like is for it to be a larger gauge as I get closer. Let me switch off the camera here. As I get up here closer to my shoulders, where I'm not as wide. So my widest part is through my hips and my waist. It's not my bust line. It's not my shoulders. So what the other thing I wanted to talk about is if you are working on your piece and we can talk about adjusting your gauge, but you can do a little bit of shaping to accommodate. So it depends on what your gauge is. If it's really out of whack, you might need to start over. but checking it sooner rather than later will save you loads of time. I do never recommend not checking it at all because then you're just guessing that it's going to fit in the end, and that seems like a waste of time. So I say check it, see where you're at. I know where I'm at, and what I think I might end up doing is I'll check it when I'm doing my main one, but doing a little decreasing so that it isn't quite so wide as it gets to, because what'll end up happening is I'll end up with too much fabric under my arms, and I hate, 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 hate that. So I don't want to have to do all the figuring out. I don't want the fronts to have to accommodate for that. I want the back to come to the center line under my arm where it's supposed to be without too much fabric. I don't want to have to shorten my front to accommodate because then it doesn't sit right. It doesn't drape right on your body. So that's not how it was designed to go. So that was the second thing I wanted to show today. Besides checking your gauge was how to do a little adjusting when you've got a repeating pattern like this. It's decide that you really want to do it because there is a little math involved. And I think even though I'm a little tired, I think I did the math correctly. So let's share that real quick. Let me show you. So when we talked about this pattern, we talked about that this stitch pattern is a multiple of 4 plus 3 stitches. So if you're going to change anything across here, it needs to be part of a grouping of 4. We want to reduce it by or increase it by 4s. So if you were too small and you wanted to increase, we would need to do it in 4s. There's a second way to do it, but that's what I'm going to start with is increasing it by 4s. If you were to decrease, since I want to work on decreasing, I'm going to talk about decreasing. The reverse would work for increasing. Um, if you were to take off all of those stitches at one time, your pattern would be out of whack. We want this is supposed to line up. It makes a really nice pattern. You don't want to mess with that. So we can't just take stitches out across because things won't line up and that will really look silly. But what we can do is we can add or take away stitches from the edges, remembering that these edges are going to become part of the seams, okay? And under your arm and down the side and not really visible for the most part, okay? So here is what I suggest. And I suspect that when I get to that part of my main piece, I have picked a size that fits my lower half, and I had already planned on doing some decreasing so that it's not too wide across up around my bust and the back of my shoulders because I really want it to fit everywhere I can. So here's how I suggest you do that. All right. So I happen to be on a right side row here. So what I'm going to do is on a right side row, and I don't trust myself to remember, for chain 4, you skip the chain 1 space, and then you do your 3 doubles and then a cross, okay? So I'm going to get rid of 1 stitch here by skipping not only the chain 1 space, but I'm going to skip this first double, okay? So I'm going to skip that one. I'm going to do 2 doubles. And then my cross. It always looks so weird in the beginning. And this is going to look funny because we have a really big space right here. Do my cross. 1, 2, 3. And then work across as usual. So I got rid of 1 stitch. I'm going to pull out some yarn. The reason I didn't get rid of 2 stitches, because I could have skipped 2, is, let me finish this one because I think it'll start to pull in a little. If I were to get rid of two stitches here, the pull-in part would be, it would be a pretty steep curve that you get there. And we want this to be gradual. We want it to seem invisible that we're changing the stitch count on this. So one stitch here, we're going to do the same thing at this end, and it will remain subtle. 1, 2, 3, and cross. Oh, come on. All right, let's try that again. 1, 2, 3, and cross. Two, 3, cross. All right, so here we're on the last one. I'm going to do 1, 2. I'm going to skip this last one, and I'm going to go ahead. Is that what I wanted to do? Wait a minute, I didn't write it down. Yes, I want to skip. I skipped the first one there. I think that's what I want to do. Hold on, we're going to try it. Nope, the cross won't be long enough. We want to skip
Center
the
stitch.
center stitch. Thank you. We want to
So
skip the center stitch, do one here so that we still have a decent distance to make the cross. Okay. And then, so we got rid of a stitch there, and then we finish with a double in the third chain. Okay. So now we've gotten rid of two stitches, one at the beginning and one at the end. All right. And it's coming in a little bit. So you could see if we had done two stitches at each end, it would really come in dramatically. So now, the wrong side row is we're going to a double in the top of the it's supposed to be in the top of the cross. I'm going to skip that. I'm going to do a double in the next two. So I got rid of one of the double crochets there. Chain one, work all the way across. And I think after I get through with this row, you'll get the idea. I think we can talk it through. Now, this is only if you need to adjust. If you were, if you're fine with your measurements, it's all good. If you need to increase, I'm going to skip I'm going to go into the cross on this one. If you need to increase, you can put where we had skipped, you can put two stitches. 1, 2. I have to remember to do the chain one. I found when I'm tired, like right there, I forget the chain one. And then I'm missing it on the next row. Okay, there we go. Chain one. And when I put that one in the wrong spot, that's why it's off. That's all right. We're going to keep going. One. So where we're decreasing stitches here, you could put an extra double crochet, was my point to increase. Now, depending on how much you feel like you need to get rid of, maybe you don't need to actually get rid of whatever the width of a full repeat is. Maybe it's somewhere in between a full repeat and the next one, or just half of a repeat is all you need to get rid of. If it's only half a repeat, I don't know that it's worth it. But if you need, somewhere between 1 and 2 repeats, I think I've gotten all off pattern here. I apologize. There we go. Um, I want to make sure I show you how we talked about this morning in class, that you could just have, when I get to the end of this row, you could just have like two, where you finish with a double crochet in the end. You could just finish with 2 double crochets at the end. It wouldn't be part of the pattern, but it would just be 2 rows of double crochet going up the side, which is going to be part of the seam, and it might just look intentional. So I don't think you have to fully commit to a full taking out the 4 stitches or 8 stitches or however much you need to do. And I will be able to report back on that next month as well. But all right, so I'm going to skip my second one there, because that's been my habit here. And one in the end. Okay. So now what I've done is I've gotten rid of 2 stitches at each end. But to make the pattern work out, you really have to get rid of, to make your repeat work out, you really need to get rid of all of the end. So if this was enough, if what I've just taken off was enough, I could just have, let me do 1, 2, 3, 4. And I could do, that's my chain 1 space. I could do a double here. And I'm not going to do the cross here. I'm just going to leave that one there, just like that. And then I'm going to go into the next piece. Or the next repeat, I should say. 1, 2, and 3. It always pulls really, really smooth from my ball of yarn until I'm on camera. There we go. Okay. 1, 2, 3, and do my cross. One, 2, 3. And do my cross. 1, 2, 3. Okay. All right, so make this just a hair brighter. There we go. Okay, so you see I don't have a cross here. We're going to pretend Well, you know what? It'll just be easier if I work all the way across. One. That's why I did this tiny piece. Mhm. Yeah. Yep, ran out of yarn. Isn't that the way it goes? All right. All right, so I want to mimic what I did on this side. So I have, this is one in a chain one space and then two stitches. One, two, I'm not going to do the cross on this side either. And do my double. So what I could do then is just keep these stitches just as doubles and do my other crosses. And it would, because we've come in a little bit, it could just be double crochets going up, knowing that when we seam, we're going to lose that little bit anyway, and it would just look like a little edging here. Again, on the seam, under your arm, down the side. Ultimately, you have to decide if you feel like that's worth it or not, or if you want to keep going and take out the full stitches to get back down to a regular repeat. Does that make sense? Okay. So I will report back next month on how I do once I get this part done and I start and recheck my gauge to see how off I am or if I'm right on. But regardless, I know I'm going to want to do some decreasing when it comes closer to my shoulders. But I suspect that I'm going to be end up taking out full repeats um, because I have a little bit of difference I want to work on there. Once you get your whole back done, to the specifications that you want. And I recommend, we did this morning with one of our students who had completed most of her back, is held it up to her back. We put it across, we let it hang, and got in front of the mirror to see exactly where it hit, make sure she was happy with where it was, and that that was the length she actually wanted. So it's up to you. It's your adventure. You can make it a little shorter, you can make it a little longer, you can go right on. If you deviate from the pattern at all, make sure that you mark down what you've done so that we can do the same thing for the fronts. So that when we do the seaming, you don't have longer fronts or longer backs or a longer back, so that we can match everything up. We'll also, we're about to do our, I'm going to show you how to do the neck shaping. You're going to put it up across, and if you've got someone else who can help you, it's the best. See where they want you, according to the pattern, to take off for the neck and make sure that that works for you, that it's not too wide. Knowing that at the end of this, we're going to put a ribbing all the way around that's going to fill in that space. So you might, I suspect you'll probably be fine with what's written in the pattern. Um, but everybody's got a little bit different. Some people have really wide shoulders. Some people have very narrow shoulders and don't want so much, don't want a huge neck opening. So know that that can be adjusted a little bit. Um, we can also, looking forward, we can also adjust that ribbing at the end too. So if you're mostly happy, but know that you're not going to want that ribbing to come in way high when we get to that part, that can be adjusted as well. So there's lots of little places where we can make sure that this sweater really, really fits. This is just one of them. So let me show you how to do the neck shaping that they talked about. And that is on page 100 of your pattern. And share. Okay, so I'm just going to work with the stitches I have here and we're going to do our best here. All right, so I read this like 3 or 4 times and thought I was just maybe a little overworked or tired, but I feel like there is a word missing. It says right side row, work row 1 of your stitch pattern until there are, and I'm going to reference the first size, 6 reps of 3 doubles, 1 cross, skip a chain, 1 space. There should be another word there, remaining. So you're going to work in your pattern until there are, if you're the smallest size, 6 reps, repeats remaining. And when there are, then you're going to do 3 doubles. I'm sorry, you're going to do 3 doubles, 1 single, and a slip stitch and fasten off. Okay, so let me show you what that looks like. I'm actually going to pull this out because I need to be on the right side. Okay, so I'm going to work. Let's do that crossover again. I'm going to do it right here. So we're going to pretend that if I was doing the smallest size here, that I have 6 of my repeats remaining, okay? And then they want it to be a little bit tapered, so I'm going to do 3 double crochets. So I'm going to go into, now, if I'm not mistaken, I'm going to use my chain space. And I think this works out okay. I'm just going to go into the chain space. That's 1 double, 2 doubles, 3 doubles, a single, and a slip stitch. And what that does is it gives you a little slope so that it's not in the picture, it looks kind of like a hard line here, but it gives it a little bit of a slope here. Okay. And then you're going to fasten off, which means cut your yarn. And then you should have left, or you have 6 pattern repeats plus 7 stitches. Then you're going to skip the next 41 unworked stitches. And when they mean stitches, they mean these doubles and the chain 1 space. The chain 1 space is considered a stitch. So don't just count these doubles. So you're going to count across, again, for the small size 41. You're going to rejoin your yarn. I have other yarn here. So we're going to pretend it's right here. And we're going to do rejoin with a slip stitch. I'm going to have to work on my math here to do the proportions right for this tiny sweater. Okay. A slip stitch, and then a single in the next stitch. So we're doing the reverse of what we did before, and then 3 doubles. 1, 2, and 3 into the chain space. And then you're ready. So we've got a little slope down. Here's all the stitches that you skipped, a slope up, and then we can continue with our pattern to the end, as usual. 1, 2, 3, cross. And then keep going. Lost count of my decreases here. Okay. So you're going to end up with stitches on both sides with an opening in the middle here that will be for your neck opening, obviously much wider. If you make any sort of adjustments, like if you feel like you want this smaller or wider, write down, although we can go back and look to see how many pattern repeats you covered, because we'll need to do the same thing when we do the fronts, so that this will be our shoulder seam, and we want to have the same fabric to stitch it together, our shoulder seam for our fronts. So whatever you do to the back, just make a note if it's not part of the pattern to how many you skipped or how many you've done. We can also then just count the stitches across the top, so to make sure when we do the front, we do the same thing so that they'll match. Because that can get kind of awkward. If you're off by a stitch or two, it's not the end of the world. We can, because you'll have we'll have the ribbing around the edging here. We can hide a stitch in there if we need to, but try to be as close as you can on that. And I think that's it. Amy, did you have any questions? You talked about your gauge a little bit before we started class, but
Let's see. I have no questions on gauge. I know what I need to do, which is
right,
just try again
right. So Amy
because
rechecked her gauge and was off. She used the whole measurement across and was off, would you say by 2 inches?
2 inches
2 inches, would 2 inches too small or too big?
too big.
Too big. So, you know, 2 inches is going to make a difference, because you can probably guess that the same thing's going to happen on the fronts, that you're going to gain stitches on the front. So she's going to make some adjustments before she continues on. So it happens. I'm telling you, it happens. It happens in knitting,
Yeah.
it happens in crochet, not all the time, but it does happen that your gauge can change. So one of our teachers here, Peg, she's the one who taught me. She's like, in the second class, I always recheck gauge. And there is at least one person where that was helpful. So, because it can happen. So, to get a sweater that fits, it's these extra steps that I think really make it. So, yep. Hopefully you loved making it the first time. You'll love making these stitches the second time.
I only got two rows,
Okay, perfect.
four, two,
Yeah,
which side? Right side. Okay. So I don't know if that shows up very well,
I'm
but
gonna, I'm
I
gonna,
was getting nice stitch definition. It's just too
yeah.
wide.
Okay.
No big
Nice.
deal.
All
Start
right.
over.
So we'll work it out. So between now and next month, the goal is to finish the back. Of course, if you don't finish the back, it's a great thing about crochet. You can slip your hook out, get a new ball of yarn, and we can start our fronts.
Mhm.
And we'll talk about the fronts and some unique shaping that we can do there as well. It will be helpful though if you've got your back at least mostly finished, so that we can see how it's coming around for people. Because then we can really decide, if we want the whole thing really oversized. If the back is a little oversized, is the front? Do we want it? How much do we want it to overlap? All of those kinds of things we're going to get into next month. So I have a lot of crocheting to do between now and next month. Luckily, once I'm not so tired and I'm in the groove, I feel like this pattern goes really quickly. It
Yeah.
even on, I mean, I'm doing a fairly big size. It does seem to work out pretty quick. So I'm like, oh, I'm already at the end of the row. It's like pleasantly surprised. So, all right. There's no other questions. If you're watching this later and you've got questions, I'm here. I'm happy to help anytime. You can email us here at Around the Table Yarns, info@aroundthetableyarns.com. If you put the calendar cardigan in the subject line, it's much easier for me to find it. Um, and we can either get on Zoom together or I can answer a question via phone call or email, and I'm always happy to do that, even if this is months after the fact. I promise I save all my notes. So, wherever you are in the process, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.